All right, we are diving into one homeowner's absolutely unbelievable battle against the mortgage industry. His fight to keep his home uncovered a twisted trail of manipulated documents and really questionable tactics that feel like a direct echo of the 2008 financial crisis. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a scenario that sounds completely impossible, right? But this is the exact bizarre question at the very heart of Jeremy Bass's story. And his nightmare didn't start because he missed a payment or anything normal like that. No, it all started with a deeply, deeply suspicious request from his mortgage company. So the trouble gets rolling when Bass's mortgage servicer, a company called Carrington, shows up with a stack of papers and they're acting strangely urgent about getting them signed. Now, we all know signing mortgage paperwork is part of the deal. But the stuff in this particular stack of papers, well, it was anything but normal. And for Jeremy Bass, the alarm bells starting ringing almost immediately. This wasn't just one little red flag. This was a whole fireworks display of them. Get this. They wanted him, in 2019, to sign a document and pretend he'd signed it way back in 2012, 7 years earlier. And on top of that, they included his ex-wife, who was never, ever on the loan in the first place. This wasn't some clerical error. This was a blatant attempt to rewrite history. And Carrington didn't just ask once. Oh no. They launched what can only be described as a full-on pressure campaign. They kept sending him different versions of the paperwork. They offered him $100, which Bass saw as less of an incentive and more of a bribe. Then came the calls, relentlessly, every other day for months. They even sent a notary to his house who just sat there waiting for 45 minutes. I mean, that level of desperation is another massive, massive red flag. And don't just take my word for it. Legal experts say this is serious business. One mortgage compliance attorney called this kind of thing extraordinarily unusual and said it just screams potential fraud. This is not how things are done. So Bass refused to sign, and that's when he decided he needed to do his own digging. So what did his digging turn up? Well, when Bass pulled his own official property records, he found something that just shouldn't exist. A document that suggested he didn't owe any money on the house at all. Okay, this timeline is where the story goes from weird to truly bizarre. So in October of 2009, a new loan document gets created and recorded with Bank of America. Simple enough. But then, just a couple of weeks later, on November 10th, a totally separate document gets filed that officially declares his original loan was paid in full. How can you create a new loan on a debt that's about to be wiped off the books? Logically, it just doesn't add up. And to really get why this is so stunning, you need to understand what this document is. A letter of full reconveyance is basically the final word. It's the legally binding paper that says the mortgage is done, the debt is gone, and the bank no longer has a claim on your property. It is the mortgage world's version of a giant paid-in-full stamp. And here it is, the central contradiction. The bank is trying to foreclose using that loan document from October 2009, but their own paper trail shows a document filed after that one saying the original debt was paid off. So which is it? They can't both be true. This discovery made it clear to Bass that he was dealing with something way more serious than a simple paperwork mistake. And it turns out this wasn't some one-in-a-million fluke. As Bass dug deeper, he found another case with details that were almost spookily similar, and it involved the very same banks. Just look at this table. It compares the Bass case to a previous one that went all the way to the Idaho Supreme Court. The parallels are just jaw-dropping. Both involved Bank of America. Both had one of these mysterious, paid-in-full letters. And get this, in both cases, that letter was signed by the exact same person, notarized by the exact same person, and filed in November 2009. I mean, come on, that's not a coincidence, that's a pattern. And here's the kicker. The big contradiction. In that first case, Bank of America went to court and argued that the paid-in-full letter was just a simple mistake. But in Bass's case, with almost identical facts, their representative admitted in court that the letter was totally valid. You just can't do that. You can't argue two completely opposite things in two different court cases. It's a huge legal problem. So when their backdating plan completely failed, Carrington didn't just pack it in. Nope. They just switched gears to a whole new strategy, and this time they used the COVID-19 pandemic as leverage. So you remember the CARES Act, right? It allowed homeowners to pause mortgage payments. Well, the federal limit for that was 18 months max. But Carrington kept Jeremy Bass in forbearance for a full 24 months, 6 months longer than was legally allowed. And trust me, this wasn't a favor. All it did was allow the amount he supposedly owed to get bigger and bigger, creating a massive debt to hang over his head. So after letting this supposed debt swell for 2 years, they hit him with an impossible choice. They said, okay, either you pay us over 50 grand right now in cash, or you sign this new 30-year loan. A loan, by the way, that would add 15 more years of payments and was loaded with illegal fees. It's what's known as a manufactured default, a trap designed to force him into a new contract that would conveniently wash away all their previous paperwork problems. So you have to ask, how can stuff like this even happen? To really understand, we need to look at the bigger picture. Specifically, the track record of these institutions after the 2008 financial crisis. See, what's happening in the Bass case doesn't exist in a vacuum. Bank of America has a long, well-documented history of mortgage issues. For instance, back in 2014, they paid a record-breaking $16.65 billion settlement because they'd been selling garbage mortgage-backed securities leading up to the crisis. And that was just one fine. All told, in the 8 years after the financial crisis, Bank of America shelled out a staggering $93.6 billion in fines and settlements for mortgage-related problems. When you see numbers that astronomical, it suggests that major paperwork problems aren't just an accident. They might be part of the business model. And that brings us right back to the very core of this case, the one piece of evidence that everything else pivots on. It's a tiny detail the bank probably never, ever expected this particular homeowner to catch. Because here's the thing about Jeremy Bass. He's not just some guy. He spent 3 decades working in tech, developing secure financial software for major institutions. This is a man who understands document security and digital forensics on a professional level. He was pretty much the worst possible person to try and slip a doctored document past. So he put those professional skills to work. He analyzed the signature on that key 2009 loan document, and he alleges it's an outright forgery. His proof? It all comes down to the letter B in his last name. You can see here, his 6 verified signatures all have a consistent style. And then there's the one on the disputed document, which looks completely different. To a trained eye, that's not just a variation, that's a huge problem. And this all circles back to that critical moment in court, when the foreclosure trustee, the bank's own representative, admitted that the paid-in-full letter was valid and correctly done. They created a paradox they couldn't escape. If that letter is valid, the original debt was gone. So what in the world was that other 2009 document, the one with the allegedly forged signature, actually for? It's a question they still can't seem to answer. And that leaves us all with a pretty profound question. The entire American dream of home ownership is built on the idea that legal documents are sound and signatures are sacred. But if the key signature that secures a home turns out to be invalid or forged, the whole thing falls apart. If the very foundation is fraudulent, what is the house really built on?